I want you to put yourself in a very specific place for just a minute.
Okay, set the scene.
Imagine it's the year 2005. You're standing in the middle of a bustling, just incredibly loud car dealership in New Delhi.
Right, the air is thick.
Exactly. The sun is beating down outside. But inside, under those bright fluorescent lights, you are just vibrating with pure electric excitement.
You're buying a car.
You've saved your money for years. Your family is gathered right there around you. You are about to sign the papers on a brand new car.
And, it's a profound moment. For a middle-class family in India at that time, buying a car wasn't just a purchase.
It was an arrival.
Yeah, exactly. It was a declaration. You had finally entered the modern economic dream.
You smell the pristine upholstery. You see the gleaming paint. You grip the steering wheel. You feel completely victorious.
But there's a trap.
There's a terrifying trap. You have absolutely no idea that a massive, invisible economic trap is waiting for you the second those tires hit the pavement.
A trap that could, quite literally, cost you a significant portion of your hard-earned wealth.
And the most shocking twist here. This trap isn't set by greedy corporate executives.
Right, it's not the dealership.
No, it's not some bait-and-switch engineered by a sleazy car salesman. This trap is entirely designed, funded, and enforced by the government.
It's hidden deep inside these beautifully branded, globally celebrated environmental fuel policies.
Policies that are supposedly written to protect you.
Yeah, policies drafted by the smartest minds in the room.
We are taught one universal, unquestionable truth in the modern world. Going green saves you money.
That's the baseline assumption.
Right. Buying a fuel-efficient car is the ultimate financial no-brainer. It is supposed to be pure common sense.
It's the golden rule of modern environmental economics. The entire global policy apparatus is built on this exact foundation.
Well, today, on this deep dive, that foundation gets completely pulverized.
Yeah, breaking it all down.
We are diving into a stack of research that exposes a brutal reality. We're going to prove how top-down, well-intentioned fuel efficiency mandates actually rob the poorest consumers of their wealth.
And worse, how they strip away their fundamental choices.
It is a violent overturning of conventional wisdom. The research we're looking at is a heavy-hitting working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research.
The NBER.
Authored by Randy Chugh, Maureen L, and Urvashi Narain.
And these are not fringe commentators. I mean, these are serious, top-tier academic hitters representing institutions like the University of Maryland and the World Bank.
They are the establishment.
They are. And they brought all the analytical firepower of the establishment to bear on the most chaotic, rapidly expanding automotive market on Earth.
India in the early 2000s.
But they didn't go in with an open mind, did they?
No, they definitely didn't. They went in with a very specific agenda.
They absolutely did. They went in fully expecting to catch the Indian consumer making terrible financial decisions.
They wanted to prove that everyday car buyers were hopelessly short-sighted.
They wanted to confirm the bias of the global elite. They thought, well, these consumers are probably terrible at math. Let's get the data to prove it.
Exactly. They expected the numbers to fall into a neat, predictable pattern of consumer stupidity.
But instead, the data fought back.
It shattered their assumptions, it shocked the researchers, and it sent ripples all the way up to the World Bank.
So we really need to understand the battlefield before we look at the battle.
The scale of what was happening in India during this specific window of time is almost impossible to comprehend.
It wasn't just growth, it was an asphyxiating explosion.
Let's look at the timeline. April 2002 to April 2008.
Right. If you look at the macroeconomic charts for India during this period, the line representing passenger vehicle sales doesn't just curve upward.
It essentially goes vertical.
Yeah.
I want to paint a visceral picture of this for you. In April 2002, the entire country of India was buying about 50,000 passenger cars a month.
50,000.
By April 2008, just 6 years later, that number hit 150,000 cars a month.
It tripled month after month after month.
Think about the physical reality of that. We aren't talking about software downloads here.
No, we are talking about massive metal boxes.
A 200% increase in the birth rate of vehicles. Imagine adding 150,000 new cars to the roads of Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore every single 40 days.
And these are cities with ancient infrastructure.
Two-lane roads designed for bicycles and auto rickshaws suddenly invaded by a relentless tsunami of hatchbacks and sedans.
The gridlock was apocalyptic. But the traffic was really only the most visible symptom.
The invisible symptoms were far more dangerous.
This boom triggered an absolute geopolitical and environmental nightmare.
The air quality.
It was catastrophic. I mean, the cities were physically choking, the smog was thick, toxic, inescapable.
Public health metrics were plummeting.
And simultaneously, the national energy grid was screaming under the pressure.
Right, because India didn't have massive domestic oil reserves to fuel this explosion.
Exactly. They had to import the oil. So millions of new cars meant millions of barrels of imported crude.
The country was bleeding foreign exchange reserves just to keep this new fleet of vehicles moving.
It was an existential economic threat disguised as a middle-class boom.
Okay, so the Indian government is staring over the edge of a cliff. The boom is suffocating the cities. It's bankrupting the treasury.
They hit a desperate policy crossroads.
They have to stop the smog.
Mm-hmm.
They have to stop the oil drain.
Yeah.
Immediately.
When a government faces a crisis like this, the global playbook essentially offers two primary weapons.
Option A and option B.
Right. Option A is the European model. You slap a massive, heavy tax on the fuel itself.
You make the gas so painfully expensive that people are forced to drive less.
Or they're forced to voluntarily buy tiny, super-efficient cars.
Right.
Then you have option B, which is a top-down mandate. You ignore the consumer completely.
You go straight to the manufacturers.
Yes. And you legally force them to hit a specific fuel economy standard. You tell them you cannot legally sell a vehicle in this country unless it gets this many kilometers per liter.
So a tax versus a mandate.
Exactly.
Wait, let me think about this. Because in an economics textbook, option A seems like the purest, most elegant solution.
Sure, on paper.
If you want less carbon in the air, you just tax the carbon. It's direct.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the government just jack up the price of fuel?
Because the textbook assumes a sterile vacuum. It assumes a developed economy. But drop that textbook into a developing nation battling extreme poverty. That elegant solution becomes a weapon of mass destruction.
Let me puzzle this out. If you slap a huge tax on diesel and petrol, you aren't just taxing the wealthy guy joyriding in his new sedan.
No, you're taxing everything.
You're taxing the supply chain. You're taxing the delivery driver.
You are taxing the diesel trucks that haul rice and wheat from the rural farms to the urban markets.
Now I see it. If you double the price of fuel in India to stop car pollution, you inadvertently cause the price of basic food staples to skyrocket.
You literally risk starving the poorest citizens in the country.
The policy meant to clean the air ends up punishing the people who don't even own cars.
It is a profoundly regressive tax. The political backlash would be regime-ending, and the human cost would be devastating.
So option A, the fuel tax, is completely radioactive.
They can't touch it, which forces them into option B.
Top-down fuel economy standards for the manufacturers. The government decides to force the market to be efficient.
And this decision, this pivot to mandates, is built on a massive, glaring assumption about human psychology.
An assumption bordering on absolute arrogance, really.
The policymakers leaned into option B because they genuinely believed the public was too foolish to buy efficient cars voluntarily.
They looked at their own citizens and essentially said, "You are incapable of doing math."
That was the foundational premise. And this wasn't just an Indian phenomenon. This is a globally accepted, heavily studied concept known in elite academic circles as the energy paradox.
The energy paradox. This is the beating heart of the entire mystery.
The theory is quite simple, but its implications are massive. The energy paradox claims that consumers are completely, hopelessly terrible at calculating long-term value.
It says we are slaves to the sticker price.
Exactly. The theory states that a consumer will refuse to pay a slightly higher upfront price for a highly fuel-efficient car, even if that specific car will save them thousands and thousands of dollars in gas money over the next 10 years.
I think about this like buying appliances. It's the classic leaky fridge scenario.
Oh, yeah.
You walk into a big box store, you need a refrigerator. You see two models side by side. Fridge A is $500, it's cheap.
Yep.
But the insulation's absolute garbage. It leaks cold air constantly. The compressor has to run 24/7. It's going to cost you $100 every single month in electricity just to keep your milk cold.
A terrible long-term investment.
Then you look at Fridge B. It costs $800. The sticker price hurts a bit more. But it is a marvel of modern engineering.
Beautifully insulated.
Hyper efficient.
It
It only costs $10 a month in electricity to run.
If you do the math, Fridge B is a gold mine. The $300 extra you pay up front. You earn that back in just over 3 months of electricity savings.
Right.
After that, for the next 10 years, Fridge B is basically printing money for you.
It is the only logical choice. But the energy paradox says the average consumer will walk into that store, stare blankly at the two fridges, see the $500 tag on fridge A, and buy it immediately.
They are completely blind to the future. They only feel the pain of the present moment.
And here is the truly terrifying part about the energy paradox. It isn't just an elitist theory. In the United States, it was heavily backed by data.
Really? Americans are actually that bad at math?
Well, multiple robust studies on American consumers seem to confirm it. In the U.S. market, people consistently heavily discounted future fuel savings.
They loved the cheap sticker price of a massive gas-guzzling SUV.
And they completely ignored the inevitable pain at the gas pump until it was far too late.
Okay, so the World Bank researchers have these American studies in hand. They see that wealthy, highly educated American consumers are acting like impulsive children.
And they simply copy and paste that assumption onto the Indian market.
They figured, well, if wealthy Americans fail this math test, surely the Indian consumer, who is likely buying their very first car ever, will be even worse at it.
They thought it was a slam dunk.
They expected to find the ultimate proof of the energy paradox.
But wait, we need to pause and look at the reality of India. This is a country battling profound poverty.
Right.
This is a culture where bargaining is an art form, where every single rupee is aggressively counted, negotiated, and stretched to its absolute breaking point.
The stakes of every financial decision are incredibly high.
Does it really make logical sense that a consumer living in that hyper-vigilant economic reality would just casually throw tens of thousands of rupees away over a decade because they were too lazy to think about fuel economy?
That was the exact tension that drove these researchers. They had the prevailing theory on one hand and the reality of Indian frugality on the other.
They needed to test it.
They needed to prove, once and for all, if the Indian consumer suffered from the energy paradox.
So they gear up, they bring their sophisticated economic tools, and the moment they try to measure the market, they hit an absolute brick wall.
They walked straight into a massive data desert.
This is where the story gets wildly interesting. Because the traditional American arsenal of economic weaponry completely misfired in India.
It failed spectacularly. Let's look at how economists normally solve this puzzle. In a developed market like the U.S., economists have three primary weapons to figure out if consumers actually value fuel economy.
What's weapon number one?
You track the used car market. This is usually the gold standard. You wait for a geopolitical event that causes gas prices to spike.
Suddenly, gas is $4 a gallon.
What happens to the price of a used massive Ford Expedition?
It plummets. Nobody wants it.
And what happens to the price of a used Toyota Prius?
It skyrockets. People fight over it.
Exactly. By measuring the fluctuation of used car prices against the fluctuation of gas prices, you can perfectly calculate exactly how much the public values fuel efficiency. That's weapon one.
Makes total sense.
Weapon two is similar, but you watch how the sales of new cars shift when gas prices bounce up and down. Do people suddenly stop buying V8 engines and start buying four-cylinders?
Tracking behavioral shifts against price shocks. Got it.
And weapon three is the heavy artillery. You build incredibly complex, massive supercomputer behavior models. You feed in vast, ocean-sized troves of granular consumer behavior data, credit scores, demographic shifts.
And you let the machine spit out evaluation.
Exactly. Okay, so three powerful weapons. The researchers take these tools, they land in New Delhi, and they try to deploy them.
And they realize they can't use a single one of them.
Not one.
Not a single one.
The tools were entirely 100% useless. They were trying to use a compass at the North Pole. It just spun in circles.
Why? What was so different about India?
Let's look at weapon one, the used car market. India's used car data in the early 2000s was practically non-existent in any formal sense.
There was no centralized database?
There was no Kelley Blue Book. There was no Carfax. The market was a sprawling, chaotic web of millions of private, unrecorded handshake deals.
Cash traded in alleyways.
You cannot run basic statistics on whispered conversations, so weapon one is gone.
Okay, so used cars are out. What about weapon two? Just track new car sales against the gas price shocks. We know global oil prices were incredibly volatile in the 2000s.
Global oil prices were volatile, but Indian fuel prices were completely numb.
Numb? How is that possible?
Because of the most unique feature of the Indian economy at that time. The government heavily, ruthlessly regulated the price of fuel at the pump.
Wait, they fixed the price.
They absorbed the global shocks to protect the populace. Between 2002 and 2008, gas prices in the United States doubled. It created this perfect, beautiful, natural experiment for American economists to study.
But in India,
Look at the data from Delhi during those exact same years.
let me guess, a flat line.
An almost completely horizontal line. The government subsidies acting as a massive shock absorber. The price of fuel barely moved a few rupees over half a decade.
I see the problem. If the price of gas never changes, you can never measure how a consumer reacts to a change.
Exactly. The core mechanism of economic observation is measuring variance. If there is no variance, you are staring at a blank wall. There is no shadow to catch.
You can't measure the impact of an explosion if the bomb never goes off.
Precisely. So weapons 1 and 2 are dead. And weapon 3, the massive supercomputer models.
Those require the kind of pristine, hyper-detailed consumer data sets that simply did not exist.
Right. In a rapidly developing nation finding its footing, that data is just not there.
The economists were completely stranded. They had a crucial global question, millions of cars flooding the streets, and absolutely no way to measure the truth.
Most researchers would have packed up and published an inconclusive paper. But this team found a hidden backdoor.
This brings us to what I want to call the genius workaround.
It is genuinely one of the most elegant pieces of economic sleuthing you will ever encounter. It's a masterclass in lateral thinking.
They realized that to crack the black box of the Indian car buyer's mind, they couldn't look at the gas pumps. The pumps were lying to them.
So they had to look at the cars themselves.
They had to deconstruct the vehicle.
Yeah.
They built a feature decoder. Now, I know there is a very dense academic term for this, but we're going to throw the jargon right out the window.
Good. We don't need the jargon to understand the brilliance of the math.
Let's visualize this. Imagine a car is not a single solid object. Imagine a car is a recipe.
A recipe of attributes.
Right. When you go to a bakery and buy a chocolate cake, you aren't just buying an abstract concept of cake. You are buying a highly specific mixture of flour, sugar, eggs, butter, and cocoa powder.
And the price of the cake is dictated by the quality and quantity of those ingredients.
When you buy a car, you are doing the exact same thing. You are buying a recipe of engineering features.
You are buying a certain amount of physical weight. You are buying a specific size of engine block.
You are buying luxury add-ons like power windows or a nicer stereo. You are buying safety features like anti-lock brakes.
And critically for our story, you are buying a specific engineered level of fuel economy. That is an ingredient in the recipe.
The researchers' goal was to build a mathematical formula that could isolate the price of each individual ingredient.
They wanted to use statistics to ask the data a hypothetical question.
Which was?
If two cars are identical in every single way, same weight, same horsepower, same safety features, but one gets exactly 1 more kilometer per liter of fuel economy, how much extra does that single feature cost the consumer?
It sounds so beautifully simple. Just feed the dealership brochures into a computer, run the raw numbers, and see what the algorithm spits out.
But here is the massive danger. This is where basic math will absolutely destroy you.
Destroy you.
If you just run simple statistics on this data, the results you get will violently violate the laws of physics.
Violate physics. How? The math is just math.
Because the math doesn't understand engineering. In the real world of automotive design, these ingredients are deeply, inextricably entangled. They fight against each other.
Give me an example of that.
Think about how a car manufacturer actually achieves better fuel economy. It isn't magic. If you want a car to burn less gas, what do you have to do?
You have to make the car lighter. You rip out the heavy steel beams. You use thinner glass. And you definitely put in a smaller, weaker engine.
Exactly. You strip the power and you strip the mass. Therefore, in the real world, high fuel economy is almost always married to low vehicle weight and low engine power.
They are genetically linked.
Okay, I see where this is going.
If you just dump all the raw prices and specs into a computer and run basic statistics, the computer looks at the data and says, wow, cars that get incredible gas mileage are incredibly cheap.
But the car isn't cheap because it has great gas mileage.
No, it's cheap because it's a tiny, terrifyingly flimsy, underpowered tin can.
The simple math gets totally confused. It mixes up the ingredients. It thinks the consumer is paying less for good fuel economy, when in reality, the consumer is just paying less for a weaker, cheaper car.
The true value of the fuel efficiency ingredient is completely hidden behind the massive penalty of having a weak engine.
The variables are entirely conflated. If you don't find a way to separate them, you are flying blind.
You will inevitably conclude that consumers don't care about fuel economy.
Which perfectly confirms the energy paradox.
Exactly. The bad math supports the bad assumption.
So how do you separate them? How do you isolate the pure, unadulterated value of fuel economy without it getting muddied by the fact that the car is small and weak?
To understand their solution, you first have to understand the battleground they were operating on.
The Indian car market wasn't a monolith. It was fiercely, intensely divided into two completely different universes.
It's a massive market split.
Yes. There was a strict dividing line. On one side, you had the hatchbacks. These were the absolute workhorses of the Indian economy. Small, practical, easy to park in crowded streets.
Think of cars like the Maruti Suzuki Swift or the Hyundai Santro.
And how big was this side of the market?
It was the overwhelming majority. 65% of all cars sold were hatchbacks.
2/3 of the country and the other side.
The sedans. These represented only 17% of the market.
Sedans were the status symbols. They had bigger trunks, slightly more legroom, a distinct silhouette.
They are completely different demographics.
Entirely segregated. A middle-class family scraping together every rupee for a cheap hatchback is not cross-shopping a luxury sedan.
The buyers don't mix. The pricing strategies don't mix.
And the researchers used this strict segregation to perform the ultimate statistical magic trick.
They found a way to use the sedans to unlock the secrets of the hatchbacks.
Okay, this is my favorite part of the entire paper. We are going to explain this pure logic without any academic terms.
No advanced vocabulary. Just the mechanics of the idea.
Here is the core problem again. We desperately need to know how much Indian buyers value the fuel-saving technology inside a hatchback.
But we can't look directly at the hatchback's fuel economy numbers.
Because those numbers are contaminated. They are artificially inflated because the hatchback is so tiny and weak.
We need a clean measurement of the technology itself, isolated from the weight of the car.
So what did the researchers do?
They stopped looking at the hatchback entirely. They looked at the sedan.
They looked at a totally different car to measure the first car.
They looked at the same brand sedan from the exact same year.
Walk me through this.
Let's say we are trying to figure out the pure underlying quality of the manufacturing technology inside a Fiat hatchback built in 2004. The researchers didn't plug the Fiat hatchback's numbers into their formula. Instead, they took the average fuel economy of all the Fiat sedans engineered that same year.
Wait, my brain is catching up. Why on earth does that work?
Because it isolates the brand DNA. Think about how a car company operates. When Fiat's engineers spend millions of dollars in 2004 developing a new, highly efficient fuel injection system, they don't just put it in one car.
Oh, they put that fundamental technological DNA into all their engines that year.
The sedans get the new tech and the hatchbacks get the new tech.
Exactly. So if a company's sedans are highly efficient compared to rival sedans, it is a mathematical guarantee that their hatchbacks are also technologically superior to rival hatchbacks.
The sedan's fuel efficiency is a flawless, uncontaminated predictor of the hatchback's underlying engineering quality.
But, and this is where the genius clicks into place, the sedan's fuel efficiency has absolutely nothing to do with the weight or the horsepower of the hatchback.
Yes. You have successfully extracted the pure manufacturing tech signal, and you have completely bypassed the tiny car bias.
You have cleanly separated the ingredients in the recipe.
It's like trying to judge the true quality of an athlete's running shoes, but the athlete has a severely sprained ankle. You can't look at their race time to judge the shoe. The data is corrupted by the injury.
If you want to know how fast the shoe is, you have to look at their healthy teammate who is wearing the exact same brand of shoe.
That is a brilliant analogy. You are using the healthy teammate, the sedan, to isolate the true value of the equipment.
This twin brand trick completely resets the board.
It changes everything. Remember when they ran the flawed basic math? It looked like fuel economy had almost zero premium.
It looked like the Indian public didn't care at all. The energy paradox seemed totally confirmed.
But what happened when they applied the brand DNA filter? When they ran the purified math?
The truth exploded out of the data. The illusion shattered. It turns out Indian consumers weren't ignoring fuel efficiency.
They were actually paying a massive hidden premium for it.
How massive?
They were paying anywhere from 3% to 10% of the total vehicle price just for the fuel efficiency feature alone.
3 to 10% of the entire sticker price. On a vehicle that costs thousands of dollars, representing years of savings, that is an enormous chunk of wealth dedicated entirely to long-term efficiency.
It completely rewrites the narrative. If the government had relied on the basic flawed math, they would have looked at the market, concluded the public was stupid, and instituted heavy-handed, market-crashing policies based on a total illusion.
This workaround saved them from a catastrophic misdiagnosis.
It proved the consumers cared, but it didn't completely answer the ultimate question.
Right, because caring isn't enough. We have established that the public is paying a premium, but we need to look at the true cost. Is that premium actually a smart financial bet?
We have to drill down into the microscopic reality.
Mm.
We need to calculate the exact price of a single kilometer.
Let's do the raw data dive. How much were people actually paying at the dealership for this tech?
The researchers broke it down to the absolute fundamental unit. They calculated exactly how much extra an Indian buyer was shelling out in order to get just 1 extra kilometer per liter of efficiency.
1 kpl.
What's the damage?
Between 2002 and 2006, buyers were paying an upfront premium of between 12,100 and 37,400 rupees just to squeeze that single extra kilometer out of a liter of gas.
12,000 to 37,000 rupees. That is highly specific. But as I look at the timeline and the data, I see something weird.
What's that?
That premium. It isn't static. It's actually dropping significantly every single year.
A steady downward slope.
Why? Is that because of some sudden technological miracle? Did an engineer in Mumbai invent a magic ultra-cheap carburetor in 2004 that revolutionized the industry?
There was no magic. It was just the brutal, grinding reality of macroeconomics. The actual, real, inflation-adjusted price of cars in India was dropping overall during those years.
Oh, because the market was exploding, so economies of scale were kicking in.
Exactly. The market was becoming hyper-competitive. Dozens of new models were flooding the dealerships. Manufacturing was getting vastly cheaper and more streamlined.
As the total sticker price of the car dropped, the premium tied to the fuel economy ingredient naturally got pulled down with it.
If the overall price of the cake goes down because flour is cheap, the proportional cost of the eggs inside it goes down too.
Precisely. The premium was shrinking, but it was still a massive upfront investment. Now here's where we have to confront the concept of paper wealth.
The long-term fuel savings.
Right. Because walking into a dealership and paying 30,000 extra rupees for an efficient engine only makes logical sense if you actually save 30,000 rupees at the gas pump over the life of the car.
Otherwise, you are just throwing money away.
To figure that out, we have to know how much these people are actually driving. If you buy an efficient car but leave it parked in your driveway, you lose money.
Exactly. So the researchers dug into granular consumer survey data. They pulled the exact consumer behavior metrics, and they found a massive glaring divide based on fuel type.
Petrol versus diesel. This is a huge distinction in India.
In the Indian market, diesel cars and petrol cars are distinct behavioral beasts. Let's look at the diesel hatchback owners.
These people were driving relentlessly.
They averaged around 1,870 kilometers every single month.
1,870 kilometers. That is heavy usage. They are on the road constantly. Long commutes, inner-city travel, maybe using the car for business.
But the petrol hatchback owners, a completely different story. They were only driving 1,070 kilometers a month.
Almost half the distance.
A staggering difference in utility.
So here's the conflict that emerges from the spreadsheet. Because the diesel owners drive almost twice as much, they are naturally saving vastly more money at the pump over the 10-year life of the car.
If you just look at the raw math, the diesel car looks like a money-printing machine.
And this data point became a weapon. Outside observers and policymakers pointed at the petrol car buyers who were driving less and saving less and said, look at these fools. They bought the less efficient car.
They don't know how to save money. They are the ultimate victims of the energy paradox.
Wait, I have to stop right there. I have to push back on this logic. Is it really fair or even economically sound to call someone stupid for buying a petrol car if they simply don't commute as far?
It sounds like you are diagnosing a flaw in the policy assumption.
Think about it. If you only drive to the local grocery store a mile away and you drop your kids at a school 2 miles away, why on earth would you pay a massive upfront premium at the dealership for a super efficient diesel car?
You will literally never drive enough kilometers to earn that upfront money back.
You'd be bankrupting yourself to be efficient.
You have just perfectly articulated the exact question the researchers were asking. They realized that efficiency is relative to utility, so they ran the final definitive calculation.
Moment of truth.
They took the exact rupee premium a consumer paid at the dealership. Then they matched it against the exact rupee savings that the specific consumer would generate over the 11 to 12-year lifespan of the car.
Mathematically accounting for their specific driving distances and a standard economic discount rate.
This is the climax of the core question. Did Indian consumers undervalue fuel economy? Did the energy paradox actually exist in this hyper-frugal market?
This is the detail that completely shatters the illusion. Not only did the Indian consumers not undervalue fuel economy, the petrol buyers valued it perfectly.
Perfectly. What do you mean perfectly?
I mean right down to the decimal point. The math proved that the upfront premium the petrol buyers paid at the dealership was practically identical to the present discounted value of their future fuel savings.
That is incredible. They didn't have access to World Bank's supercomputers. They didn't have Excel spreadsheets.
They just intuitively, culturally knew exactly how to price the long-term value of their own driving habits.
They were hyper-calculating economic rationalists to the core. But brace yourself, because it gets crazier. That's just the petrol market. Let's look at the diesel market.
The people driving 1,800 kilometers a month. The highway warriors.
Yes. In the diesel market, the researchers found something that completely inverted the global assumption.
What was it?
The upfront cost these consumers paid for efficiency actually exceeded the money they would save over the car's lifetime.
Wait, what? They paid more upfront than they got back.
Yes. Far from being short-sighted, they were actually overbuying fuel economy. They were paying a premium that was mathematically higher than their total lifetime savings.
This is a total paradigm shift. The global assumption, the World Bank's deep-seated fear that developing nations are too poor or uneducated to plan ahead, was utterly annihilated by this data.
They aren't short-sighted. If anything, they are so terrified of future gas prices that they are hyper-focused on fuel efficiency to a fault.
The energy paradox in India was officially bankrupt. The theory was dead. The Indian consumers were vastly smarter and far more future-oriented than the policymakers sitting in Washington, D.C. ever gave them credit for.
Okay. We have established that the Indian consumer is a hyper-rational mathematical genius. But if that is true, we have a giant, glaring mystery to solve.
Because the data in this very same paper points to a consumer behavior that makes absolutely zero financial sense.
The paradox within the paradox.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it all centers on the ultimate showroom showdown.
The petrol versus diesel twins?
Yes. To truly push consumer sanity to its absolute breaking point, the researchers isolated a phenomenon in the dealerships called twins.
A twin is the ultimate laboratory experiment in the real world. It is the exact same car model, built on the exact same assembly line, offered by the dealership in two identical versions.
The only difference is the engine block.
Right. One has a petrol engine, one has a diesel engine. Same interior, same seats, same stereo, same paint job. It is a pure, isolated choice between two fuel economies.
And the economics of this choice are completely mind-bending. I want everyone listening to pay close attention to these numbers because it sounds like a glitch in the matrix.
Let's lay out the terms of the deal. If you walked into an Indian dealership in 2002 to buy a twin, the diesel version of the car only cost about 7.7% to 9.4% more upfront than the petrol version.
A relatively small bump in the sticker price.
But in exchange for that small upfront bump, the diesel engine was 27 to 30% more fuel efficient. You could drive a massive 3 kilometers further on a single liter of fuel.
Okay, an 8% cost increase for a 30% efficiency increase, that is already a phenomenal return on investment.
Yeah.
But there's a kicker, right?
A huge kicker. Remember how the Indian government subsidized fuel? They heavily subsidized diesel fuel because it was the lifeblood of agriculture and commercial trucking.
They had to keep tractors running.
So what did that mean for the car buyer?
It meant that at the pump, diesel fuel was 30% cheaper than petrol.
Let me summarize this staggering math. You pay about 9% more for the car up front, but the car is 30% more efficient, and the fuel you put into it is 30% cheaper for the rest of your life.
That is not just a good deal. That is an incredibly lucrative, slam-dunk, no-brainer financial windfall.
Mathematically speaking, choosing the diesel twin over the petrol twin is the equivalent of finding a pile of free money on the sidewalk.
So the overwhelmingly obvious question is, with a deal this incredibly lucrative, why wasn't every single person in India in 2002 buying the diesel version?
Let's look at what people actually did. In 2002, only 46% of hatchback twin buyers chose the diesel version.
Less than half. More than half the country looked at the free money and walked away.
It did rise over time. By 2006, it hit 74% as word caught on, and the long-term savings became undeniable.
But still, a massive, stubborn chunk of the population was walking into that dealership, staring at the math, and intentionally stepping over the pile of money to buy the petrol car.
It is the equivalent of throwing away gold. How much money were these petrol buyers actively losing? What are the raw numbers?
The researchers quantified the exact losses. By intentionally choosing the petrol version of a hatchback twin, an owner voluntarily threw away net savings equal to 23% of the car's entire purchase price.
Nearly a quarter of the car's value just evaporated.
For sedan owners, they threw away savings equal to 15% of the purchase price.
I am genuinely flabbergasted. We just spent 20 minutes definitively proving that Indian consumers are hyper-rational actors who value fuel economy down to the decimal point.
And now you're telling me that a huge percentage of them are literally setting tens of thousands of rupees on fire? Are they completely insane? How do you possibly reconcile this contradiction?
I will step in to defend the consumer here. They were not bad at math. They were not insane. And they were not victims of the energy paradox.
Then what were they doing?
They were making a highly calculated choice based on a factor that spreadsheets struggle to measure.
What factor?
They wanted to go fast.
Go fast.
Yeah.
We are talking about Indian hatchbacks in 2002. Nobody's entering the Grand Prix.
It's not about racing. It's about the fundamental soul of power. We have to dive into the physical reality of automotive engineering.
Remember earlier when we talked about how a car is a recipe of fighting ingredients?
Yes, the weight fighting the safety, fighting the power.
Well, the diesel engine in India at that time had a severe dark side. Yes, it was highly efficient. Yes, the fuel was heavily subsidized. But you have to understand how a diesel engine works compared to a petrol engine.
Break down the physics for us.
A petrol engine uses a spark plug. It mixes air and fuel, and a tiny electric spark creates a small explosion. Because the pressure is relatively low, the engine block can be made of lighter materials.
Like aluminum, lightweight, zippy.
Exactly. But a diesel engine doesn't use a spark. It uses pure compression.
Yeah.
It takes the air and squeezes it so violently under such massive pressure that the air itself gets hot enough to ignite the fuel spontaneously.
Squeezing air until it explodes, that sounds violent.
It is incredibly violent.
Yeah.
And because the internal pressure is so astronomical, the engine block literally has to be built like a bank vault so it doesn't blow itself to pieces.
So it has to be heavy.
Incredibly heavy. Thick, dense cast iron. This massive weight penalty utterly destroys the car's horsepower to weight ratio. The car becomes sluggish, unresponsive, and heavy in the corners.
They were basically putting tractor engines into small hatchbacks.
That is exactly what it felt like. Look at the data from the paper. A diesel sedan only had 70% of the horsepower to weight ratio of its exact petrol twin.
It was a full 30% weaker right out of the factory.
And we really have to put this into global context to understand the pain of the driver. Indian cars were already wildly underpowered compared to Western cars.
Dramatically so. The paper specifically highlights this gap. An average Indian petrol sedan weighed about 2,200 pounds, with a horsepower ratio of 0.041.
An average U.S. car at the exact same time was a 3,500-pound beast with a horsepower ratio of 0.054.
So an Indian petrol car is already a lightweight, low-power vehicle compared to what an American is used to driving.
Right, and if you take that already modest car and you strip away another 30% of its power by dropping a heavy cast-iron diesel block into it,
you are left with a painfully slow, utterly joyless driving experience. It struggles to merge onto a busy highway. It strains and wheezes when trying to pass a truck.
If you have your family in the car and the AC is running, climbing a hill becomes an ordeal.
The truth is finally revealed. The petrol buyers weren't losing 23% of their money due to stupidity. They were intentionally spending that 23% to buy speed.
They were buying acceleration. They were buying safety on the highway. They were buying a thrilling, or at the very least capable, driving experience.
They simply refused to spend the next 10 years driving a boring, sluggish tractor.
It is a totally rational economic transaction. They were taking their future fuel savings and actively trading them for present-day horsepower.
They are pricing their own happiness.
Pricing happiness. I love that concept.
Economists actually have a rigorous mathematical framework for this. They calculated the happiness floor. They asked the algorithm a fascinating hypothetical.
Which was?
How much pure cash would you have to pay a petrol buyer to force them to drive the sluggish diesel car and still leave them feeling just as happy?
What was the price tag on that joy? What did the consumers value their acceleration at?
The implicit valuation was staggering. Petrol buyers valued that extra acceleration, that better engine performance, at a minimum of 100,000 rupees for hatchbacks.
And a massive 150,000 rupees for sedans.
150,000 rupees, just to not be slow, just to feel the car actually move when you press the pedal.
That reveals a massive, deeply ingrained psychological desire for power and capability.
It is an overwhelming consumer preference. It proves that utility is not just about fuel efficiency, it's about the entire experience of ownership.
And it is this exact preference that brings us to the final chilling realization of this entire deep dive.
The policy boomerang.
Yes, because this massive desire for power,
Yeah.
it is the exact thing the government is about to accidentally destroy.
Let's bring this all the way back to the beginning. Option A and Option B.
Right.
The Indian government is choking on smog. The cities are paralyzed. They cannot use Option A, the fuel tax, because it cascades through the economy and starves the poor.
So they chose Option B, top-down fuel economy mandates. They draft legislation to force the car manufacturers to hit a strict kilometers per liter target.
Now, let's play out the reality of this scenario. What happens on the factory floor when the government passes that law?
The car manufacturers in India in 2006 aren't going to invent magic anti-gravity engines overnight. They don't have the multi-billion-dollar R&D budgets of Toyota or Mercedes.
So how do they achieve the government's strict new standard?
They do the only thing they physically can do. They achieve the fuel standard by stripping the car of weight and gutting the engine's horsepower.
They take the already slow cars and they make them even slower. They force the entire market into the tractor category.
Which brings us to the ultimate tragedy of the paper, the hidden tax on joy, the profound injustice of macro-level standards.
Unpack the injustice of this for us. Put us in the shoes of the consumer.
The entire justification for the government stepping in and forcing these standards was the energy paradox.
It was the deeply paternalistic belief that the government needed to save short-sighted, uneducated consumers from their own bad math.
The elite mindset. You people are too stupid to buy efficient cars, so we will legally force you to buy them for your own good.
But we just spent the last hour meticulously proving that these consumers are already perfectly rational.
They already value fuel economy flawlessly.
The only reason they occasionally buy less efficient petrol cars is because they deeply, desperately value the horsepower, the safety of acceleration, and the driving experience.
So the mandate doesn't save them from a math error at all.
No. The mandate merely strips away their freedom. By forcing manufacturers to gut the engines to meet the legal standard, the government eliminates the powerful cars from the market entirely.
The mandate creates a massive, invisible loss of human welfare.
It is essentially a hidden, punitive tax on the poorest consumers. It strips away their choices in the name of a green crusade.
It says your desire for a car that can actually accelerate safely to pass a truck on a busy highway is now illegal.
It is a devastating welfare loss. When economists look at the aftermath of this policy, they don't see a cleaner, happier market.
They see hundreds of thousands of rupees of human happiness just wiped out, erased by the stroke of a bureaucratic pen.
Because the macro-level policy completely ignored the micro-level human reality. The spreadsheet didn't account for the joy of the drive or the safety of power.
Exactly. The true logic of the world is not found in a top-down model in Washington or New Delhi.
It is found on the floor of the dealership, where a family huddles together and makes a calculated, perfectly rational trade-off between the cost of gas and the capability of the machine they are trusting with their lives.
So, to summarize this absolute demolition of the energy paradox,
The Indian market isn't irrational.
the consumers aren't blind. They aren't victims of their own stupidity.
They are hyper-calculating actors who desperately value their money, but who equally value their time, their safety, and their experience behind the wheel.
And that realization leaves us with a rather chilling historical echo. Because the mechanics of what happened in India in the 2000s, the hubris, the assumptions, the top-down mandates, they are not isolated to the past.
We promised a final provocative thought, and I think you are right on the edge of it.
Look at the world today. We are facing unprecedented global anxiety over carbon peaks and climate change.
Governments everywhere are making massive, aggressive pushes for electric vehicles.
They are banning the sale of internal combustion engines by specific dates. They are mandating sweeping, civilization-level green energy transitions.
Top-down mandates on a global scale.
Precisely. And the question we have to ask ourselves, the question this NBER paper forces us to confront, is this.
Are governments currently repeating this exact same arrogant mistake?
Are macro-level environmental mandates secretly stripping away your micro-level personal freedoms?
In the frantic rush to save the consumer from themselves, are these policies currently costing you far more in hitting welfare, choice, and utility than they could ever possibly save?
Are we staring at the exact same invisible trap, just painted in a different shade of green?
It is a question that makes you look at every headline, every new efficiency standard, and every government promise in a completely different light.
The next time you see a politician promising to mandate the market for your own good, remember the Indian car buyers. Remember the hidden tax on joy.
Keep questioning those obvious top-down narratives.
Keep digging into the data, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.